Ladies and gents, welcome back for another podcast on Engineers. I've got Kylie Richmond joining us today, who's a dev advocate. Hello, who's a dev advocate at Elastic, who's going to be talking to us about three really interesting and key subjects that are close to her heart at Elastic. So, the open source to enterprise journey, integrating ElasticSearch across on-prem, cloud, and multi-cloud environments, and observability. We're also going to talk about her journey into being a dev advocate and that shift. And that seems like a really, really good place to start. Do you want to talk to us about that, Carly, and intro yourself?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I'm a developer advocate. I actually joined Elastic in April of this year, 2022. But before that, I spent 10 years working as a front-end engineer, which a lot of people come into developer advocacy through that traditional kind of engineer first route. But maybe one of the things that makes me a little bit different is I actually come from an investment banking background. So I actually spent 10 years building software inside an investment bank. And basically what happened is I got really into public speaking while I was working in the bank. So I started going to conferences, started speaking at meetups, I started meeting all these wonderful people and just really loved that side of things and kind of naturally wanted to make that more and more part of my job. So from that, I got someone kind of gave me the advice and said, you'd make a good advocate. If that's the kind of things you like to do, if you like to talk about tech, if you like to go to conferences, if you like to write blogs, if you like to do these things, that's basically what an advocate does. And I was doing that kind of stuff in my spare time. So I started kind of applying last year for a few roles. And then, I managed to get one here at Elastic, which has been really fun.
Love it. Enjoying it so far?
Yeah, it was a bit weird actually, kind of taking something you do in your spare time for fun and having it as a job. It felt a bit strange to start with. Also moving from banking to tech was different as well in terms of the restrictions and the processes and the challenges. But it's been great fun. It means I get to do the things that I enjoy doing. It means I've probably got a better balance at home as well because I'm not using my evenings and weekends to try and panic and finish off a conference talk before a conference, the week before. So yeah, it's been great. I definitely recommend it if anyone's into that kind of scene.
Where do you fit into the product and engineering organization?
Oh, that's really interesting actually, because I know DevRel, depending on who you speak to, depending on the company, it can sit in a variety of different places. So here at Elastic, we're actually sitting within the marketing organization. So we collaborate kind of with them in marketing on the event side of things, but we also try and kind of cross divide to talk to engineering as well. But I have friends that, they're a dedicated org that reports to the top level execs, or it could be part of engineering. It can be its own function, its own right. It really just depends what tends to fit for the organization, for its maturity. And for us, marketing is fitting quite nicely.
Yeah. I guess you've gone through that maturation process and because of the nature of the business and the products, obviously, that you offer to the market, I can imagine that marketing and engineering relationship has got to be really on point.
Yes. And I think the other thing as well is that a lot of the times we can, as because Elastic obviously is now 10 years old this year as a company. Yeah. So I think a lot of times can get hung up of making that decision of where DevRel sits and feeling like as you grow that, you just have to keep it there. But actually the reality is that, we have moved around. I speak to colleagues that have been here a lot longer than I have, and they'll say, well, we used to be part of engineering. We've moved around a little bit. So just being willing to adapt and say, look, actually, it doesn't make sense for us to be part of this org anymore. We're going to move here is fine, because ultimately your goal is the same. You're still going to be collaborating with those various different departments. It doesn't really matter. It's the end objective of, engaging with developers in the community. That's important, what drives you irrespective of where you sit.
Of course you are. Elastic, 10 years old. Do you want to share with us a little bit more about Elastic, the business, and the product line? So listeners have a really good understanding of some other products, aside from ElasticSearch, really commonly known,
Yeah.
and give us a bit more.
Yeah, sure. So the big thing for us that people probably know about is the ELK stack. So that's Elasticsearch. You've got Logstash, which is basically, an ingestion and pipeline tool that you can use for transforms that can then ingest into Elasticsearch and other various sources. And then you've got Kibana, which is the data visualization and dashboarding tool that can sit on top. But we've also got solutions now that we've kind of branched out that basically sit on the top. And we want them to solve kind of problems that are big in the domain today, but also have a bit of an element of search tied to them. So the three that we have is the enterprise search, which kind of makes sense that because it's good search in the title, right? Basically, the idea is being able to, within your enterprise, index and search across various different sources so you can ingest from either a web crawler or loads of other connectors. And I think of my experiences working in a big bank and trying to find information is really difficult for large enterprises. So I kind of understand why this exists. I wish it was there when I was trying to find all like the internal documentation, because sometimes it can be quite difficult to find. So being able to kind of use a common search platform on top of that is obviously product number one. Solution number two, observability, which is basically covering the main key pillars. So being able to manage your logs and search over them, identify anomalies and trends, what's going on. Also being able to correlate logs with other sources as well, being able to manage infrastructure and monitor what's going on there. Then you've got the application monitoring, which you can maybe dig into more a bit later, because that's kind of the bit that I like to play with a lot. And it's basically the idea of, being able to have a visibility of what's going on. That's what observability is all about. And then finally, we've got our security SIEM product. So it's the idea of being able to find security intrusions and other various insights to protect your ecosystem and figure out what's going on. So obviously making use of Elasticsearch there, mainly for, as the main data source. But obviously those three solutions exist as well if people want to go and have a play.
Love it. Okay. Talk to us a little bit about the journey then from open source to becoming an enterprise. That would be really interesting to understand that journey.
Yeah, sure. So I can say a bit, obviously, if people go to elastic.co, they can see the full story as well. But I can cover some kind of the main things that have kind of established us, as you say, from one product now being an enterprise. So initially, actually, the first original Elasticsearch product is not called Elasticsearch. It's actually called Compass. And it was built in the early 2000s by our current CTO and founder, Shai. And it was like all of my kind of favorite things about technology. He built it to solve a problem. He was basically wanting to allow his wife to search through her growing recipe collection because she was studying at that point in time. And it was basically to allow her to look through all of that. So what does a technologist do? Well, they find a technical solution to that problem, don't they? So from that, the second version, obviously now named Elasticsearch, what we've come to know and love, was basically built and then released. And many people will know it's actually built on top of Apache Lucene, which is a performant text search library. Now, the company, we said Elastic, is 10 years this year. So Elasticsearch Limited was the original company name, then got changed to Elastic. Founded in 2012, and that's where ELK starts to have its foundations. So Shai then kind of teamed up with Jordan Cecil, who is from the Logstash side of things, and then Rashid Khan from Kibana for visualization to basically provide the ELK stack to give us those powerful kind of trio of capabilities that we all talk about and love today. And then it's more kind of later on, a few years later, where these solutions, these products that we start to talk about are emerging. So Elastic SIEM was originally launched in June 2019. And it was actually combined with endpoint protection through an acquisition of a company called Ingame. And then Observability is November 2021. So that's through the acquisition of Onpremise and then building out those features further, which is what we continue to do today here in 2022.
Love it. Love it. Can we touch on some of ElasticSearch's key use cases, or what the business feel are their key use cases? I think everyone understands, near real-time searching is probably the thing that we all think about, but help us understand more and the more power that the product has.
Mm-hmm. So when I think of search, I realize how complicated it actually is. I think we're a bit protected these days because we're used to using search engines. We're used to, having an idea in our head and then having our search results match. It's actually a really difficult thing to do search well and to do it across languages, to do it in a performant way, to do it in a distributed way. It's still a hard problem. And that's basically the key things that ElasticSearch was attempting to solve then and still trying to solve now with all sorts of detailed and interesting features. You could probably spend all day just talking about all the various features of ElasticSearch.
Okay.
So in terms of the near real-time searching, we say it's near real-time is the reason because it's within a second, basically. Yep. And it's on the indices. So we'll talk about indices in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's basically, if they have added a request in the last 30 seconds or so, then that will be the ones that are returning within a second. So there's an element of kind of caching going on in there.
Got you.
So when we talk about search, what we don't tend to realize is there's actually loads of things that make up search. So when we talk about full text search, obviously you'll be wanting to match particular text. So it can be through querying. So there's a query element. Anyone who's done Elasticsearch requests via the client, mucking about in the Kibana console will know that you can do kind of queries, basic matching. You also have filtering, which has an element of caching involved. So between those two, that's normally how you're going to figure out what you're looking for.
Yeah.
But then we start thinking about language. We start thinking about how to break up your terms of a search.
Yeah.
That's where we have tokenizers. So there's obviously the default tokenizers available in Elasticsearch. You can override them with custom ones. There's full details of the docs for anyone wanting to go down that avenue. And that forms part of an analyzer along with, character fields for maybe stripping out things like HTML text.
Yeah.
And also kind of other things that you might want to consider like stemming or anything like that. We've also got another couple of key features, things like search as you type, something we're really used to. Obviously there's capabilities to allow you to get that from Elastic out of the box. I've also seen if for websites you can build really useful kind of integrations to Elasticsearch using different tools like SearchKit, for example, for anyone from a React background. But then you've also got kind of all sorts of advanced features. So one kind of interesting one that was covered at a meetup recently was actually percolators. Okay. And percolators are basically a way to save your query within an index. So it's like you're searching for a query to apply, which I thought was kind of cool.
That's cool.
But then obviously it is, definitely. And I'd encourage people to go and see. So we had a meetup recently in London. We were finding out how Rightmove use percolators for their property search. And they go into a lot of nice detail around the performance aspects and stuff too. So go check it out, people.
Yeah.
But we have so much other stuff as well. There's geo search as well. It's not just about text. Text is the primary focus, but you can do geo search. Again, that meetup covers that too. And then there's also aggregations. So in addition to having these searches, you can combine aggregations to perform sums and other complex aggregations on kind of data sets as well. And obviously that fits in well with a lot of the visualizations in Kibana. If you really think about Kibana, it is doing Elasticsearch aggregations under the hood for you. There's loads of different operators and things like that, but it's actually quite challenging and interesting as an advocate because Elasticsearch does so much and then you've got the solutions that do so much as well. There's no way you can know about everything, but it's definitely worth diving through. There's so much in there to hopefully help people build intuitive, performant search experiences, have it scale as well. Because obviously it's distributed by design. If you know about your cluster with your nodes within it and how you access the trigger the responses rather via REST or one of the clients. So it can get really in depth really quickly, actually.
And I know we're going to talk about that, but I'm trying to imagine the complexity, and you're making search, like you say, intuitive and performant for people.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the complexity that's happening under the hood, to use your analogy. That must be really challenging to build a system that is so performant, so intuitive, like you say, with a solution like search as you type. Do you know about some of those challenges or conversations that happen under the hood inside Elastic to build something like this?
Yeah. Not so much as I would like. I mean, we do have our core kind of ElasticSearch team that look after it. I've seen some really interesting things about, obviously, with the performance side of things, whenever they make a change, they have to be very mindful about the amount of testing and regression that they do to make sure, not just in terms of, a very simple cluster with maybe one or two node solution, but how it scales up, how the number of shards scale up. So I know that they make heavy use of performance testing and metrics to make sure that, at all kind of levels of scaling, that it's going to be performant and running through. Obviously, we do also have coming through, not just on like our community groups, but through support as well. Sometimes people will say, well, it's not quite working as I expect. This query is not as performant as I expect. So then you see things like the tuning side of it, either in the tuning capabilities we have in Elastic or just finding out from the engineers.
Yeah.
Our engineers are super knowledgeable, and definitely that's the people I will be pinging and saying, hey, can you help me? I'm not sure how this works.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk about all sorts of things on how that all works. I know that depending on the algorithm that you're using as well, there's various different the default approach for finding things is what's called query then fetch. So the idea is that basically you're sending a query to each shard within your node in Elasticsearch. And then you find all of the documents that are needed, and then you have to join things back together and fetch the documents. Because obviously, when you're wanting relevancy for your document set and you distribute it, you don't just want it to be on the part in the shard. You want it across the entire clustered data set.
Yeah.
So that's something that can catch people out as well. They might make assumptions about how things are relevant and how they need to tune their query, make use of boosting or other capabilities.
Makes sense.
And that's just when exactly. And every use case is different. You can't provide super relevancy for everyone, because relevancy is actually very subjective.
Yeah.
So that's where we just invite people to come and talk to us and come and ask us, and we can try and help them out with giving them a query that should work for what they need.
Yeah. Okay. We were touching on, before I asked my previous question, quite a lot about ELK, or you're about to focus on that. It'd be really interesting to understand, when building or integrating ELK, or changes when considering it, or how would that change when considering a company's infrastructure? If we're looking about on-premise services, cloud services, or even a multi-cloud, how are the products or solutions going to change, do you feel, or have you seen?
So at the moment, I don't think there's much in terms of clear differences. Certainly for big infrastructure kind of evolution, such as Shai's recent discussion about how we're progressing forward with serverless over the next few years, cloud is his focus priority number one, because that is where the majority of our base would be. So in the future, it might be like that for a while, but certainly right now, everything tends to kind of function in terms of feature sets in roughly the same way.
Yeah.
You might have different challenges in terms of performance. So for example, whichever storage that you've sat Elasticsearch on the top is potentially going to have an impact on your retrieval speeds and things like that. That's just normal to be expected. That's something as engineers we just deal with. But cloud is obviously the main kind of recommended where to go for ElasticSearch and ELK stack capabilities. But it means you can get everything in one place. So you can also get the other kind of solutions we were talking about on your cluster, and you can kind of switch things on and off as you need. It's also available in the leading marketplaces. You don't need to rhyme them off. Everyone knows where we're going for cloud these days. But I know for a fact from kind of particularly my experience in banking and also from chatting to people in the community that we do have a lot of people still using it kind of on premise. So they have their own kind of control. It's not just in terms of engineering problems. It can be down to the nature of the industry in which you're working in. If you think about banking, very heavily regulated environment, some jurisdictions have rules on where you host your data. Obviously, you having it on-prem on a trusted data center is probably what you're going to go with. And there's guides on how to do the full installation. Yeah. Obviously, sometimes maybe there's a bit more hand holding and you need to kind of do a lot more to get it set up rather than just if you go and use Elastic Cloud and it spins up your cluster in a few minutes and you're done. But sadly, that's just the avenue that you end up having with on-prem, sadly. And then the one I'm not got too much experience of, but certainly is another option, is the hybrid option. If you have a private cloud and you want to have a private between private and public, I definitely suggest getting in touch with more of our sales guys to figure out how that can be managed and handled. But that is certainly an option too. That's the main hosting options that we see, not just for ELK, but the Elastic solutions as well.
Got you. Okay. On some of the observability aspects, we said at the start of the podcast, it is a hot topic right now. The companies are really doubling down on their observability efforts. Talk to us a little bit about ElasticSearch's observability offering and some of the products or solutions inside of that.
Yeah. So I think there's 5 key ones that we talk about in terms of domains within observability. I'll probably touch more on 3 rather than 5, but we'll at least frame them all up. So the first thing is logs monitoring. Of course, it makes sense. One of the key pillars of observability being logs, but obviously the power is being able to connect it with other sources of information, but also having an experience where you can find things through your logs easily. Integrates with the machine learning capabilities for things like anomaly detection. But the idea is basically that it needs to be easier for you to be able to figure out what is actually going on in your logs and connect it with various sources, which is why in observability, everything obviously has to be in one place. I mean, the start of my career, we didn't have things like Splunk or Elastic or these kind of tools for being able to easily go through logs. So as a developer, you were SSHing onto the box and then running a series of greps to try and figure out what was going on. It's not a nice experience to learn how to support an application or how to diagnose issues. So obviously with the be able to tracing it through in real time in there and also then connect it to the other observability features is obviously the best thing there. And obviously being able to input your own kind of KQL queries to try and find what you're looking for within the log is also pretty easy as well, rather than doing what I was doing before with grepping for just random phrases. Actually, normally error is the common one to look for. We've then got the infrastructure monitoring. I don't know too much about that as a front-end engineer, but from what I've kind of looked and played about, basically the idea to have an inventory of all of your kind of running infrastructure. It takes integrations from all sorts of various infrastructure sources as well. So you can have all that information in one place, along with the logs for all of them coming through as well. And then you should be able to kind of have a look and see what's going on, and also get a kind of quick picture of, what is up, what's alive, what's maybe not so alive, and try and deal with that. Then APM RUM and synthetics monitoring are kind of the three other ones. So RUM, no, I'm not talking about the drink. I'm talking about real user monitoring. So this is kind of the one that with APM, I see a lot more of the power in personally as a front end engineer.
Okay.
So I
Makes
like,
sense.
yeah, well, I like to know that, what's happening in my application, but I also like to know what the experience is for my users. Like, are they having a good experience? Is it super slow?
Yeah.
What's going on there? And real user monitoring basically allows through capturing of traces and events from them doing things like clicking, like loading a page. It will generate metrics for you, including the Google Core Web Vitals, which for anyone who's not kind of from that domain is basically key measures that outline the main performance of your application. And it has established thresholds for each measure. So it's really easy to tell if, maybe it's not the best experience you're expecting. But it also gives you insights into how people are really using your application. Like commonly, we would use things, when I was an engineer before, we'd use end-to-end tests to try and figure out, how is this going to work for a user? Have we broken something? Like, is this going to trigger an error? But, you're not going to be able to catch everything because you make assumptions on how a user is going to use it. And sadly, they don't always do exactly what you think they're going to do. So real user monitoring can capture those measures, can capture those traces and events on what they're doing on the actual live traffic. It then connects with the application monitoring as well. So, which is even better because if you think about it, if you've got an error, sometimes you're not sure what it is. So with the traces and the spans, which basically from observability side of thing, spans are just traces is basically the path through the code, but the spans will be the kind of smaller segments. So maybe it's within a particular method or something like that. It gives you that picture and then can also connect if you kind of enable distributed tracing origins, if you've got CORS conflicts that you need to worry about, it can then pass through and then between those two applications, it will connect together. So you can actually see the full life cycle of what's going on. You can see all the traces through the front end code and through the back end code as well, which I kind of really like. I think that's something that I would have loved to have as an engineer when I was trying to deal with outages. And then synthetics monitoring is more around, I like to think of the end-to-end test, but running live. Okay. So being able to trigger endpoints, being able to run playwright scripts, or being able to basically go and see, what's going on? Is this particular workflow or part of the application working, or has it been down for 30 minutes and we need to do something?
Okay.
Remember what I was saying about there's so much to know about and so many things, but in observability, you basically got those 5 key kind of areas, which will cover your key tenants, and you'll have the metrics capabilities as well. So being able to capture measures on throughput, latency, the core web vitals we talked about, which is kind of cool.
I've learned a couple of things there. Rum, not the drink, and synthetic monitoring. I think usage volume, I've always imagined it a little bit like a heart monitor, as in looking at the operational health of your systems and what's happening in the back end. But I think the RUM element is really interesting. I think I had a good idea that was happening, but I didn't know that was in your product offering. I didn't know that, I'm sure there's probably similar products on the market as well, but that's actually going on behind the scenes in the synthetic monitoring as well. So I'm guessing that's running in parallel to some of your systems, and you can understand if there are outages, or have I misunderstood some of the context?
So it will connect all together.
Got you.
Because there's 2 questions really. Is my system up?
Yeah.
Which obviously the application performance monitoring and infrastructure, your kind of basic kind of health checkpoint, that's there. But then it's also, well, am I giving my users a good experience? And that's where RUM and synthetics in my mind kind of come in. So it's 2 ways of looking at observability. I think in order to build a competitive product that people want to use, you really need to make use of both, is it live, which is what we think of with traditional observability, and then are they having a good experience, and are they even using it at all? which is where kind of more of the RUM is coming in. So APM and synthetics, I would say, cover problem one.
Yeah.
And then RUM is more problem number two.
So we could break it up to back-end observability, front-end observability, if I really wanted to simplify it.
If you really want to simplify it, yes. But I think you need to be able to connect the two as well to get a fuller picture.
There's a middle point in there as well.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is something that is, from my own experience, because even as a front-end engineer, I still had to dabble in the back end, or still had to be tracing through the server logs if something had went wrong. Because often you need a holistic picture of everything that's going on. So having all those things in your observability product, having them all connect together, is just going to give you that picture. And hopefully get front end and back end talking to each other a little bit more. I know we like to put them in separate corners, but sometimes it's nice to come together.
Okay. we always no, I agree, by the way. And we always ask this question on the pod. We want to understand your hiring landscape. If people are interested, where can they come and find you? So a couple of questions in there. Are you hiring? Sure. What are you hiring for? Give us some of that context.
Yeah, sure. So I had a brief look this morning. So all of our kind of career section of our websites is at elastic.co/careers. So you can see things there in terms of the culture, how our hiring works, where the open jobs are. So when I had a quick look this morning, I focused mainly on engineering, just because I thought that's probably where most listeners would want to go. There are some kind of open positions in engineering, and there's some technical writer jobs up there. There was some engineering jobs. I saw a couple of ones for cloud and a few other areas. Yep. They're also distributed across the globe. We are distributed by design, so anyone having a look will see distributed in a region, like distributed in EMEA, for example. Don't be too scared about that. But basically it's across that region. It's not going to be, super, super scary to try and apply. So yeah, go check out, see if there's anything that's interesting. Also always suggest people check out the source code before they apply.
Okay.
So that's kind of like the set of statements set out in terms of how our culture kind of resonates with people, and how our culture operates within Elastic. So go check that out. Hopefully there's some nice things in there that resonate with people. I certainly found that when I was applying. Obviously, if you're using Elastic or have any questions, Slack and Discuss are the best places to go. If you go to the community section of the website, it's all there. Otherwise, come and chat to me and I can try and direct you to the right place. So I'm at Carly L. Richmond on Twitter, or carly.richmond@elastic.co on my email as well. Yeah, exactly. We'll put it in the notes.
We'll put it in the notes. And are we going to see you presenting anywhere in the near future?
Yes. So I am lucky enough to be talking about RUM at Modern Frontends Live in London in a couple of weeks. So if anyone is attending, please do feel free to come over and say hi. I did get through a little discount code today, which I'll tweet. So if anyone wants to come along and to Modern Frontends and hasn't got a ticket, there's still options there.
Love it. And we are going to stay in touch. We are going to follow your journey, no doubt. Some more products to come from Elastic in the years that we obviously do stay in touch. A massive thanks to you to come and join us and talk to us about all the fantastic things that you and the team are building. And it's great to see your journey and see that you're happy and thriving in being a dev advocate. So I'm interested to see where we are in a couple of years. And a massive thanks. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome. Happy to come back. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And as always, please see some of the notes below. Follow Carly on Twitter. Do reach out if there are any questions. Join the community. Check out some of the source code. Elastic, as you know, doing some really cool things like we've spoken about today. Like, share, subscribe, and tell all your friends. about us so that you can equally come and share some of your stories as well. And thanks a lot and goodbye for now. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Enginears is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found at Enginears.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is Enginears.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.